Hey everybody, Greg here, doing an update here midday. Dow is down here at this destination area, so it should begin to stabilize, which it did intraday. The reason for these dots right there is the Dow, the S&P 500, and the transports stopped updating for, well, you can see that part of the day there, and then it resumed, moving up, joining the S&P. You see the same thing. Now let's take a look at the spiders because they continued to update at the time, so we weren't lost as far as the direction of the markets. Just a second here. All right. You can see that continued to update, and it's right up near the high of the day. It's above the open, which is a slight positive. It turns green on the day, and it's here at the 20 MA. I thought this would go down on the S&Ps down to 5220. There's a relatively large open interest there, and it was more aligned with that support area. Clearly, it didn't get there. It held the area of this unfilled gap and the 20 MA and started moving up. Transports. Let's take a look at that. Transports there. They led the way down pre-market. I said, these would probably begin to stabilize before others. Generally the market stabilized. You can see the same non-trading that was right there. So just as a general concept, right? General concepts, what are they? That we use as part of MTFs. Greater than 100% retracement. Expectation is you start to get some stabilization. Volume spike aligned with that should get some stabilization. That doesn't mean the downside is over, but for the day, clearly it is. When you get a bar that's wide, even at this time of the day, it's unlikely that it would turn all the way back down again. Whereas earlier in the day, say generally before 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, that's a greater possibility. Whereas in the latter part of the day, more confidence comes into the index, the broader markets, and it's less likely to give it all back. Whereas, say, Tesla, earlier in the day, and it's beginning to recover now, it gave it all back. But general concept, you don't make assumptions in the middle of the day of a bar, whether it's a big green bar, whether it's a topping tail bar, because things can change quite a bit by the end of the day. So that's why we do not make assumptions. That being said, Tesla here had this gap up, was positive. It pulled back to fill the gap. You had this big up day. It pulled all the way back again to test support, and it was up this morning. So it appears to be making a bottom. It should not violate down below these lows of the 50 MA. So don't want to see that happen. If this can come back at the end of the day, that is going to support the possibility that this goes up quite a bit. IWM has been the outperformer today from a daily time frame perspective. Is like big deal. It's just a big mess. It gapped down, now it gapped up. It's coming up into resistance. You can see on the 65-minute chart coming into that resistance. It's beginning to stall up here. Question is, can it hold on? As I said, probably it does hold on, and then we'll see what it does tomorrow with that PCE data as to what happens. The Qs underperforming. It was another concept from before this morning, was that those that underperform Dow transports tend to begin to outperform because they've already reached their destination. Destination in this case being support, and it was down a lot. Whereas this has not, and it gapped down this morning, and you can see it's still below its opening price and below yesterday's closing price. Opening price, the blue line, yesterday's closing price, the red line, unable to fill the gap, a sign of weakness. Microsoft was a sign of trouble, gapping under this area, and it has not been able to recover. Bad sign for tech. Apple, looks pretty darn good. Consolidating, red bar ignored. It's up near the high. Potentially that could go higher. Can it go without Microsoft? I would assume it could. Anything's possible. Maybe a little bit more consolidation, get through yesterday's numbers, and that looks good. SMHs were all over the place this morning. That gap down under a gap up bar, that's bearish. Below the opening price in yesterday's close. Still trying to advance a bit. Maybe it can survive. XLF, not quite into the big support. So this is something that we look for concepts, like looking to the left, right? And so ideally, when prices come down, like I showed you the transports did, they came all the way down. They actually exceeded it a little bit, greater than 100% retracement. The Dow is almost there. So we look for areas directly to the left to where prices stabilize. When they begin to stabilize before getting there, yeah, that's a positive because it tells us that buyers are stepping up early. Doesn't mean it won't go down here. Sometimes it doesn't and it goes up. That could be a little frustrating because we want what we want, meaning come down into this area. It's the highest probability area to make the turn. Again, it doesn't have to, but we'll see what happens there. Oil has just been all over the place. You know, it came down here, looked like it was going to go down. It came back up, hit the pivot high, and back down again. It's in the middle of the range. We don't know where that's going to go. Interest rates had moved up. You know, pre-market, I was talking, well, I guess a week ago and the beginning of this week about the weekly chart, you know, coming into, you know, this area here, you know, pulling back, this little uptrend area right there and turning up, which is still okay. And on the daily time frame, you know, it got a little ahead of itself into this resistance. It gapped down. So we're just not sure yet, you know. Things haven't all come together. If you check the pre-market review on YouTube, I showed you that breadth was almost there. Sentiment is not. So nothing decisive there. And here, Dan is talking here. Let me mute him for a second. All right. He just come into the green room a little early. He usually doesn't come in until 2:30 to start talking. Anyway, it is what it is. Things are relatively stable here today. Whether this is going to continue to roll over or not, I just don't know yet. We'll see how it all unfolds, and we'll update accordingly. All the best. If you have questions, email us, Greg and Dan at Master Trader.